And here we are. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Vincent?
I'm fine. Thank you. So, long time we didn't see each other because this pandemic a bit slowed down the communication, even for us in our peer. So, just to introduce you, Mark Goldstone. He's the director for international relations at Tavistock and Porter NHS Foundation in the UK, London. And some month ago, we began our cooperation on my side for the Moscow Institute of Psychoanalysis, where I'm vice rector for international relations. And of course, we had a plan to see each other in person in February, but this pandemic postponed this plan.
Yeah, literally the week you were coming was the week where travel finished, basically speaking. But I think it was the right and safe decision not to come. But it's still, I'm just considering that a postponement till things open up again and we can and you can come and visit the Tavistock. But also, I've never been to Moscow, so
we're waiting you to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Mark, first of all, how are the things now in London and in the UK?
So in the UK, we had a pretty hard lockdown for a couple of months, and we are slowly reopening everything. Just this week, most shops are open now. Restaurants are beginning to open now. I managed to get a haircut yesterday, which I was very pleased about. And also travel is just starting from next week. We'll be allowed to visit some countries on reciprocal basis without having the need to quarantine. So we are opening up. However, that opening up clearly comes with a greater degree of risk that will have to be managed. I think the tricky part, not just for London, is that we still don't have our understanding of the virus is still emerging, so we can't make calculations. We can only try things and see what happens. So nobody really knows how the opening up is exactly going to affect the level of virus transmission here. That said, it is obviously positive to be a bit more open now, and I understand. Go on.
Yeah, what the attitude of people? For example, here in Moscow, since everything's reopened, people stop to wear a mask in the shop, in the supermarket. Even the security is not bothering people or stopping them. So this, for example, drives me nervous because, as we discussed, I'm Italian, and in Italy we had a very difficult, or let me say even a tragic situation with several cases, several thousands of people that unfortunately left. So from my point of view, this drives me crazy because I try to protect the other wearing a mask. But what attitude in the UK?
So on masks particularly, the government has not been categorical about the advice, which means that many people are doing many different things. Some people are quite conscious about wearing face masks for the protection of others mainly, and some people just don't do it at all. Of course, one of the big factors there is we had, at the start of the pandemic, we didn't have enough protective equipment for professionals. So the government was clearly reluctant to tell the public not to start wearing masks when there weren't masks enough to go around. I think because the government is being not categorical, I think the public is trying to make up its own mind, right? Yeah. Which means there's a huge range, I think, of views about masks and perceptions of risk, actually. So I think some of those perceptions of risk are personal factors, in other words, just how you feel and how worried you are. And then there's genuine perceptions of risk, which are things related to key factors. So age is a big factor, as we know, in the seriousness of the disease. So I think in some ways, the fact that young people tend to be going out more than older people is sort of rational, if you like.
Yeah, but my point of view, and I want to know your idea, because you are living in the UK. The philosophy to this pandemic changed since Boris Johnson got to the hospital, no? Because before, I mean, even the government was a bit, let me say, got easy, no? This situation. But since Boris Johnson got to the hospital, and thanks God, everything went smoothly. So even the government changed the attitude and the approach.
Yeah, I think as Britons from the UK, I think we value our freedom and the ability to do what we want to do very highly, which meant that it was a very big decision for the government to move to a lockdown status. And in fact, a lot of people believe that we were probably 2 or 3 weeks too late on taking that decision. In a fast evolving situation. I don't want to be political, but there definitely is going to be many inquiries into the way the government handled that situation. So, and I agree with you that many members of the cabinet, including Boris Johnson himself, getting sick, really did change public perceptions about how dangerous this disease really was. And the fact that he was so sick as well, right? He was in intensive care. So
Yeah.
It wasn't a mild illness for him.
So then, how the Tavistock and Porter Foundation approach to this pandemic? So since we had a very short chat, no, through our WhatsApp or email, was very hectic situation, so we couldn't talk about it. But I know that you made great things.
So obviously you have to remember that the Tavistock and Portman is several different components. So we have many clinical services treating the patients of all sorts of different types, and we have an educational facility as well. Basically, all of that needed to be moved predominantly online in a very short space of time. And there were many people worried about how that would be. In other words, I think people were rightly concerned about how their patients would react to having therapy or therapeutic interventions provided online, as well as education provided online. I'm sort of pleased to say that although it's not without its issues, we have preserved all critical services. So people are still getting their education. People are still seeing their therapists. There is still a very small amount of face-to-face work that's continued to help manage patients in crisis, essentially. But everything else went online very quickly. And I think one of the things we discovered is adults do better than children with an online intervention. I think child observation, infant observation, certainly is pretty difficult. Of course. I'm obviously not clinical, but I do pick up things from our students and our clinicians. And the other really big thing that's happened in the clinical services is people stopped coming forward, essentially, for new cases, right? So normally you can predict, you get a steady stream of referrals into your clinical services. But I think because people stopped going to their GPs, those referrals haven't been happening. So the clinical services have been very quiet. Now, due to a combination of all the people that would normally have needed psychological help, plus people whose mental health has been affected by COVID, we may see them all surge back to clinic to see clinicians all in one go at a point in the future. So everybody's a bit we will cope. I know we'll cope, but that's certainly in the concern category. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, of course. Did you provide any service to citizens? For example, here in Moscow, our institute provides an outline service for people, not only, let me say, in psychological need, but even the usual citizen that start to panic a bit about this situation.
No, we didn't do that. There are other things that do that in the UK. One of the things we did do, however, is we provided some easy access advice and support for other NHS clinical staff, so normal nurses and doctors, not specialist mental health practitioners. And there's been a lot of information generated, podcasts, written material, as well as telephone advice, I believe, for mainline NHS staff who may be having psychological difficulties due to the strains of the pandemic. So we took that approach.
So, but now coming to the hot issues, how this pandemic changed your work?
Well, I'm working from home, and I have been working from home. Now, I used to do quite a lot of work at home anyway, so it's probably not as big as a shift for me as it is for some other people. But I've been 100 because there's just no need for me to actually go to the building. I can contact everybody like this. But it has been a lot of time spent at home. So what the other big thing, of course, is as international coordinator, a big part of my role is traveling to see our partners and to particularly China. So I haven't been able to travel anywhere, which has meant that, to be honest, a little bit like you with Moscow, some of that has stalled, which has been, I mean, I'm feeling a bit bad in that we haven't been able to do anything directly with the Moscow Institute at the moment. Well, that's still an ambition for the future, and we will get that done. So yeah, new relationships has been difficult. But I think, I don't know what you think. I think that coming out of pandemic, or living with the pandemic is probably better to say, that international partnerships will be more important than ever before.
I think this, but for example, from our side, from my side, I face a lot of problem because new partners say, okay, maybe we slow down a bit, maybe we think we reschedule even something that was going online. We have to change a lot of project from offline to online, but you know better than me that something is very difficult to be launched online. No? So we face this problem.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to know what you think about this. So we had quite in terms of the commercial side. So what is the value of online products and online interactions versus in face-to-face and being there? So, for example, the Tavistock had a big international visitors program for which people were prepared to pay, reasonable sums of money to come and be with us and receive bespoke educational week or a couple of days or whatever. Obviously, that's all stopped. Now, if we tried to replace that with an online experience, would people be prepared to pay the same amount of money? I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's been massively attractive so far. What are your thoughts?
Our experience and my thought is that people is not ready to pay the same amount of money for the online products. We had also to rethink and plan a new formula, for our product that had to change to shift, let me say, from offline to online. The positive things is that at least 40% of our, let me say, CDP, continuous professional development, were already launched online, because when you need to, let me think about the project of or the program for coaching and so on. So things that are easy to be launched online. But for example, we had a project with some partner that I cannot mention that failed because the other part wasn't ready to, never experienced an online project, an online program, and said that after the first time, say, I do not like, so that's it. And this is the thing that I think will lead to even to change the partnership, no? Because if you see that you are so narrowed, so strict about something, and you don't think that the pandemic changed the life or took even lives, no, of people, and you are not ready to work in a new mindset or in new. So the world is changing. No, we are going to be completely digital now. I think will change also the relationship with partners. No, so you will say, okay, are you flexible? Yes. Okay, we appreciate the offline. I love the offline. So I will be very and super happy to shake your hands as soon as we can, no, and to see London and to invite you in with your team in Moscow and to have like a real chat. But of course, we understood that we had to move, no, to a new life that partially is online for now. So I think that first of all, people is not ready to pay the same amount of money for online things. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. But then you end up in a bit of a funny situation where you can end up with the same course material. The face-to-face version is, I don't know how many times should it be more than the online equivalent?
I face this problem because, I'm also a professor, no, and I have my subject, and I understood that, online, you need less time to do the same program. Mm-hmm. Why? Because in an offline, you have, of course, more interaction with students. In the online, especially in the morning classes, this was my experience, students are more sleepy. Students are less involved, and you have to think of a new approach, and also you have to think of new material. So I couldn't use the same material, the same program for the digital, let me say, the online classes. Just the project that I have a project with the European Commission, and this changed completely the approach. I have to call the European Commission and say, guys, I can't launch the same project in the same format that we agree. And I know that you are strict about procedure and so on, but it's impossible. And was very, funny to hear from the European Commission that, that it's very strict to say, okay, exception. So do as you can and write as a report. So even the approach to the teaching will change.
Yeah, I think you're right about this, and I think you're right to emphasize flexibility. So there is a tension, isn't there, between flexibility, which we definitely want, and commercial viability, which still is an issue, right? That hasn't changed. The world has changed, but I think we'll end up with some new teaching realities, as you've outlined, but some new commercial realities too. Obviously, I spend a lot of time. My role is fundamentally commercial, so I obviously tend to emphasize commercial sides of things. But I think what we have to accept is that in the new online kind of world, the competition and who we're competing with, as well as the products, are going to be a little bit different. So just this morning, I was doing a little bit of research. So right now, on one of the massive online platforms, I can't share my screen with you. Okay, I'm going to read you what it says. Okay.
Yeah.
Fully accredited professional psychotherapy diploma course. Expand your skills with psychotherapy, help stress, the conscious and unconscious mind, memory, affective disorders, and more. By Dr. Karen E. Wells. Okay, so the price for that course is currently being advertised as £15.99, which I don't know what that is in. Maybe you can translate that into. So it's $20, right?
Yeah, $20.
Yeah. Now, so what I think I'm trying to point out is that can't. I don't know about you, but that can't be a fully accredited, licensed to practice psychotherapy course for $20, can it?
It's crazy.
So there's a lot. So what I think is a problem is there's much misinformation out there. I'm sure this is an introductory course, and I'm not going to try and comment on the quality, but it does seem to what you'll learn, be able to practice professionally as a psychotherapist.
First of all, I think that you need still to practice as a psychotherapist, you need the face-to-face. Just to give you this information, the Italian Minister of Health and the Minister of Education forbids to provide the diploma for psychologists and the license for psychologists if the degree was delivered online. So you can't practice as a psychologist if you had an online degree. Okay, so a BA, even MA, even a PhD, because now there is also in fashion this online PhD and so on. So the Italian government drew and signed a law that forbid this practice because it was becoming too common. It's like to be a GP or a surgeon online. So what is? Do you remember that the table game, the Happy Surgeon? That you when we were like. So it's like to be a surgeon
with the buzzy thing when you yeah, I remember.
So I remember. Yeah, Mark.
Okay, so what I was trying to point out by this is that although you and I know that if you do a course at the Moscow Institute or you do a course at the Tavistock, whether that be online or offline, and I know that certain professional bodies insist upon offline stuff, there's a lot of information out there on the internet that says pay $20, become a psychotherapist. It's accredited by the Complementary Therapists Accredited Association. I have no idea what that is, but do you see what I mean? What we're going to struggle with is to differentiate ourselves and from the mass of information that's out there. And I think this is going to be sort of the that to hold the value and it's almost like you've got to educate your potential students in advance, right? Which is quite a tricky thing to do. So, if I was my first thoughts about, I might want to become a psychotherapist, and I looked at this, I think, great, $20, I can set up. That's what it says here. And so,
for example, we are differentiating. So we had not the possibility to send to our partners, our students, was a plan for internship, and we decided to change a bit the format. So the pure theoretical part, of course, we are doing online, just to don't lose the partnership and also to give to the students something more. No, so they study for a long while, and then we reschedule the part more practical part, so case studies and practice for the next semester or for the next year. This is possible, but to be what you read me now, so made me laugh because you can practice and $20. This is the price, no? And I have also friends that are becoming they have digital business and they are selling for 19 or 97 euro programs, because now this is a new fashion to use the 97 instead of the 99. It's a new marketing strategy to become a businessman. So but if you never run a business, if you weren't able to sell a used bike, a second-hand bike to your neighbor, how you will be a businessman with the 1987 euro? So the pandemic, I think, is bringing new challenges, new possibilities, of course, yes. But I think that when the pandemic will be over, we'll kick away all these, let me say, scam that are coming up.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely some ethical issues here, isn't there? So I agree that there's threats and opportunities that we need to balance. There's things about risk that we need to balance. I think there will be some permanent changes, but also, and I think that things will be much more flexible. I think that the days of going into the office just because you should go into the office, those are gone for good. I think if you we already see actually some big businesses in London who are trying to get out of their office leases because they think that nobody's going to go to the office, or not as many people are going to those offices. I think there will be much more online stuff, but I also think that will make us value the time we are able to spend together much more. So when you are able to come visit us here in London, I will value seeing you so much more because I've not been able to actually see you up until now, if you see what I mean. So those trips and those interactions, those face-to-face interactions, when they can happen, will be more important and a greater significance, I think.
But I think even with our families, in my case, so I live already 10 years far from home, and I will consider and evaluate differently the approach that I will have when I will see my mom, my sister, my friends, my nephews. Maybe before I was telling, okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I go, I don't know, to the sea or to have some sport or to have a coffee somewhere. But I think that now I will manage even the time with them in different way, and I will appreciate more. So this yes will change also the approach.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that the professional relationships are going to change, but personal ones are too, in all sorts of different ways. And I think we haven't even really I think we are right at the start of trying to understand how that's going to be, the new world into which we emerge. There's lots of predictions, and you and I have made a few predictions here in this conversation. However, prediction's not the same as certainty, and I think that there'll be some surprising things that none of us have really thought about yet. Yeah.
Mark, before to close this, let me say, the recorded part of our chat, I remember that Tavistock and Porter this year turned 100, so it's like a big celebration. I remember that the plan of our trip to London was also a bit to celebrate, to this
of course
this year. So what are the plans now for the celebration?
All right, so the official 100 years is in the autumn time, and there were lots of plans for all sorts of different events. Obviously, the face-to-face events are either going to be cancelled or put online, or delayed. And there's still a lot of working out exactly which bits are going to be into any of those categories. There was meant to be the 100 years conference. Obviously, I think conference is just so impractical now. Like, having a theatre effectively full of people sitting close together. Well, currently it's not allowed in this country, so that's not an option. But basically, we're trying to reevaluate what the best mode of taking the 100-year celebrations forward are. That said, we've been here for 100 years. There's a funny kind of symmetry, actually, if you think about it, between the Tavistock was born out of responding to the psychological need created by the First World War. And here we are again, 100 years later, thinking about the psychological effects of another sort of world event, if you like, in this case, a pandemic. So I think that I don't think you or I are in any doubt about the continued relevance of the kind of psychological approaches that we're going to need to respond to the virus. I think that, obviously there's a physical healthcare thing that we're working with right now, but everybody is predicting that there will be psychological changes. And so I think we're not quite sure exactly how we're going to celebrate 100 years. One of the things I'm convinced about is that we're going to be still relevant and responding to the needs of the public and the psychological needs of public and professionals for another 100 years. And I think it's quite interesting, that symmetry to response to a crisis makes you more relevant than ever before, right?
Okay, it's great. And of course, the best way to celebrate your organization, your existence, is to really be supportive and help the public. I think this is the best way.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that in some ways we kind of are celebrating by keeping going with our work, right?
Yeah. I think I don't know. This is my philosophy. Is the best way to do your work, to be useful for the others. So, Mark, thank you so much for this wonderful chat. And
great pleasure.
Guys, in the next days we'll have other podcast, very interesting. We'll have virtual guests from Germany. We'll talk about the importance of blockchain in this time, blockchain technology, and also other partners that are going to join 1984. So bye and see you soon.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Always a pleasure.